Are you guys going to set up a podcast? Are you going to do one at Ortus?
I think Yaron would like to, yeah.
Are we ready to go, yeah? Beth, over to you.
Awesome. Okay. Let's start off with your name, company, and your elevator pitch for people who don't know who you are.
My name's Jon Salisbury. I work for Ortus Secured Finance as Managing Director. Elevator pitch, which I assume is something about our business. We're a commercial lender, lending up to 3-year terms, up to 25 million, and we'll go as small as 100 grand. I would say our key USPs, although they're not really unique because lots of people have them, but we have all of them, are short decision-making process. So you're dealing with genuine principles, yet at the same time you are dealing with a balance sheet lender and a lender that also has committed funds under management. So absolute certainty of delivery, which I know is important to brokers. You're also dealing with people who know their stuff. We have chartered surveyors in-house, we have legal expertise in-house, and we have structuring expertise in-house, and we have chartered accountants in-house. So we have people who really know what they're doing. So if you've got a deal that is a little bit complex, or even if it's straightforward but just needs people to understand it quickly and deliver, then we think we can provide that.
Okay, cool. How, out of interest for people who don't know, how did you get into this industry, this very niche industry?
I was a banker for years. I actually worked for Singer & Friedlander, which was bought in 2006 by one of the Icelandic banks.
Kaupthing,
yeah. That's right. And we all know what happened to the world in 2008. After that, I worked in recoveries for 5 years on the wind down of the Kaupthing, Singer & Friedlander book. And I came into this sector because, like a lot of people in that time, you wanted something different. The banks weren't perhaps going to be as fun as they had been in the past. And we all had a look at life, I think, and we, it wouldn't just be me, it would have been loads of people that looked and thought, well, I want to do something interesting, I want to be somewhere where I can make a difference, and I want to be somewhere where I'm close to the people who are benefiting from what we're providing, not be part of a massive process, but be able to say, right, we've done this bit of work today, we've provided this product, we've structured this deal, and I can just look in the eyes of the people who've benefited from that, both in terms of the introducers who build their businesses around people delivering, and also the borrowers that need our help.
Have you had a mentor along the way, or would you describe anyone as your kind of the person that you would look up to?
Yeah, I mean, I had a boss. I did the Bank of Scotland graduate scheme called Ian Stewart, and I worked for him for years. And obviously, you learn from them and you mould around them. And along the way, a lot of the Icelandic guys who I worked with, hugely impressive people. People I have enormous respect for, and you pick up things along the way. Richard Beanstalk, who I work with, who's a CEO of Ortus, again, a hugely impressive guy. I don't know anyone who is better at structuring deals and finding solutions than him. So along the way, you have mentors, you have people you look up to, people you admire. But I also think it's important to find your own style.
Sure.
And not to be modelling yourself on other people all the time.
Yeah, that's fair.
Do you think everyone in the same company should have that same style, or
No.
can you all work at kind of different paces?
It's really important that everybody's different. I think if you look around you in the office and you say, actually, you know what, there's every single person in this office is just like me, and if we hadn't been brought together by work, we'd have been, we'd have been mates anyway. That's really bad. You've got to have the guy in there that frustrates you because they're really into detail. You've got to have the person in there that is always really salesy and wants to get everything done, is always pushing. You've got to have a mix of personalities, otherwise it just doesn't work.
You need different perspectives.
You do.
Yeah.
Different strengths and weaknesses.
I think it's a good segue actually from your mentors into what words of advice would you give to young people coming into the industry now, the suggestions that you would give?
This is going to sound really old-fashioned, but the people that have done well with us have bitten off what they can chew. The most important thing is to do something well. So when you come into a business, we don't want mistakes particularly. Certainly don't want mistakes twice. We want people who listen. The thing I was told at Bank of Scotland, you've got 2 ears and 1 gob. Listen, you don't know how much yet. You might have great skills, great aptitude, things to bring to the business, but you don't actually know anything yet. You've never done a deal. You've never done a recovery. You've never seen something go wrong. You've never had a client hugely distressed in your office because, they're running really close to their timescale and they need to be comforted. You've never experienced that, and they've got to realise that. Look around at the people who've done it and learn from them.
Be a sponge.
be a sponge and know to a certain extent, know your place. So, if you're given a letter to write, just do it as well as you possibly can. Don't get annoyed because you're not...
It's beneath you.
Yeah, it's beneath you and you're not in the client meeting. So, and also get some credibility, do some exams, get qualified. Go on a course, go up to your boss and say, look, I had one of our guys in our office yesterday came to me and said, I've seen 2 data center deals this week and I just feel really outside my comfort zone. I don't feel I know about them. Can you fix that for me?
Yeah.
Absolutely delighted.
So upskill,
yeah.
Constantly upskill.
All the time.
That's really interesting you say that about the, get qualified, because if we're talking about the bridging market, which is highly unregulated, the majority of it is unregulated, technically, if we look, obviously on the lending side it's different, but for brokers, they don't really need to have any qualification if they're just introducing unregulated business. For new introducers in the market, do you think it's still important for them to be qualified as an advisor and get, I guess, more qualifications that they don't necessarily need?
I think it depends on how long you've been in the industry. There are people in our industry who came into it 20, 30 years ago and they didn't have the opportunities to get letters after their names like people have now. But what they've got is loads of experience and they don't need to prove themselves to anybody. I think that it's important that younger people who want to get to the pay grade and to the level that these older and more experienced people are at faster than them recognise that they just can't get there quicker because they're entitled to it. Another way of doing it is to say, right, well, okay, I haven't got as many years on the clock, but I am a chartered accountant. I might not have been looking at property for 30 years, but I am a chartered surveyor. People are going to look realistically at their own situation. Another way of doing it is, we have people in the in the office who may not be qualified in the sense that they've got a degree or they've got this exam or that exam, but they've worked in environments where no one else in the office has worked in that environment. So we have one guy in the office who worked for Nationwide for 2 years processing mortgages. We fall back on his experience, I think, more often than we fall back on my experience. Because you're talking about exits.
Right,
So I think it's about credibility. It's about saying if you come into the industry, you want to be treated seriously, you want to be credible, then put something behind that.
That's fair.
I think that's a great
piece of advice. In some ways, getting some sort of lending or real estate experience prior to becoming a broker is going to help you? Because so from my perspective, I started at a lender, then I moved into broking for 5-6 years to upskill my real estate knowledge. So I knew all the types of lending. I embedded myself in a corporate, which was a property company, which had a real estate finance department. I wanted to understand real estate holistically, plus all the types of lending, and coming back into lending, my conversations with brokers are far more detailed on exit because I understand actually you can't get 75% on that on exit, so we're not going to lend like for like because the yield is sub 3%, and I know that banks are working off income of the asset on its own. So it's about working together and getting those skills outside maybe before you go into that advisory role where you're supposed to understand the lenders and you're supposed to understand real estate.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying there is a great example of somebody who deserves the credibility they've got because they've put something behind it. You've gone out, you've done a load of things. You've probably spent time doing things that you perhaps ideally wouldn't have done.
Not always.
You've done it because you needed to, and I think that what brokers have in a client's life is a really trusted role. That client is saying, I'm going to trust you to solve this for me. And it's important that person has the knowledge and the genuine experience to fall back on to do that. And the examples you've given is to say put a client into a product. You've got to really be confident that the product exists to get them out of it. I don't necessarily think a formal qualification is the answer, but I think that maybe giving brokers the ability and the I suppose the means to talk more about what they've done is a good thing to give them that platform to say, look, I've done all of this, I've got these qualifications or this experience, but they're entitled, the ones who've done it need that support, I think, from the industry.
Definitely. Moving forward next year, what do you expect to see any kind of huge change or shift within the market? Or would you like to see anything?
when this question gets asked, it's a bit like when you ask somebody what's your greatest weakness, and they come up with a weakness that's actually a strength. I'm a perfectionist, or I work too hard and all stuff like that. And when people say what's your biggest what's your expectation for next year, it's hard not to subconsciously answer that question in a way that is advantageous to us as a lender. So I'm not going to try and do otherwise. I think next year is going to be tumultuous. if the it's a divided country at the moment, it's a divided society. I'm in 42. In my life, I've never seen politics more fragmented, and I think that we're going to have a really uncertain time, and we don't know how the rest of the world's going to react to this. Now, what it could impact on is confidence generally. So I think it's about saying to the lenders, I think, who will maybe stand the best chance. I'm talking from a lending perspective, are the ones that have the fewest variables. So from an Ortus Secured Finance point of view, well, the balance sheet is ours. The committed funds under management are committed. We don't have to worry about that. For us, it's about picking the right deals to do and the right clients to support. And, so we hope to be really well positioned to help people, who need some certainty next year. I think that's going to be a really big factor. I also think that there may be fewer deals. And again, if there's fewer to go around, then the good people should mop those up.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of worrying if there's going to be less business, but we've got more lender entrants in the space. Like, do you think there is enough business to go around currently?
Well, there's a lot of there are. I mean, we're still doing deals for asset purchases, and some of these are very significant asset purchases. The market is still alive, and it's not true that it's dead. So I think you've got to speak to people and say, right, if somebody is finding the market completely dead, then I can't sit there and say we're experiencing that. Yet at the same time, if somebody says, oh, it's absolutely rocking and rolling, then you've got to wonder, how it was for them before. So I think that there are more lenders in the space, but this has been a crowded market from day one. So if you're in a room that's got 1,000 people in it, it's crowded. If it's got 800 in it, it's crowded. If it's got 1,200 in it, it's crowded. It's just a crowded market. And what we need to do is to deliver for the relationships we have. So certainty. Focus on your relationships. Focus on delivering the deals you're doing. And I don't think that you necessarily need to worry about deals next year. I can't speak for people who are fresh into the market, but all I know is I wish them well. If they're good, I wish them well, because the more good people we have in this industry, the better.
Agreed.
Just from what you said about committed funding, do you think next year could potentially be more of a principal lender market? We had a broker on a panel recently who said that in a tough market they would prefer to work with principal lenders on the basis of funding.
It's funny that they say that just in a tough market, and because we've always looked and said, if you're going to what brokers should have is deals, and what lenders should have is money. That's how it works. And I think that a broker, I've never been a broker, so I can't get inside a broker's head, and there must be other pressures, other considerations that factor into this. But we've always thought, we've never, we've always been surprised a little bit that brokers haven't asked us more questions. Now, we want to be asked the questions because we have the answers.
You've got the good answers.
If they don't answer the question, it's difficult to steer the conversation round. And we used to laugh in the past because we used to say that no one seemed that interested. When we launched our first fund, it made a difference because a different class of brokers started dealing with us, and that was great. But no one seemed massively interested in it.
Have they changed that viewpoint now, though? I think since Brexit, when actually we saw funding lines being pulled, is that when we started seeing brokers asking questions? That's a bit reactive. I don't think that should be the case. I don't think that's how brokers should act. Are you seeing a more of a shift now on them asking the questions that are needed to be asked? I think that the brokers that we deal with, that they're experienced people, they've been burnt, but at the same time, there are also some very good, for example, peer-to-peer lenders out there. They're very good. I would use them as well. It's not an exact science. It's not a case of saying, right, this lender has got committed funding, this lender simply hasn't. I think brokers should just, they just need to get themselves comfortable and ask searching questions of the lender. So if a lender says, well, we're funded in this way, then dig a bit deeper.
But doesn't that come with, you've been there? I think that sometimes if you've been in the market for a while, people stop asking questions because they go, well, look, Ortus are here. They've been here. They've stayed here. There's no negative press. They must be doing something right. So I can get comfortable with that. I mean, look, as a former broker, there were a finite amount of lenders that I would use for some of my clients because I need to be comfortable that whoever I was delivering finance for would have the funds. So you've probably got yourselves into a position where people don't need to ask those questions, which is probably a positive for you.
Yeah, hopefully, and and in a way, that puts the pressure on us to make sure people understand the other reasons for using this. Yeah, absolutely. But you make a really good point.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks
very
for
much.
coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jon. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Do you enjoy it?
It's all right once you get into it, isn't it?
It's all right.
Yeah, it's just you forget there's people standing around taking photos and
Yeah,
filming.
that's like, what's happening?